Hey Utah, it's your congressional hopeful Taylor Lee for Utah's 1st district, and as you can tell, I've been so busy I have not shaved yet. But I wanted to do a real quick video. Um, I'm super busy, so these videos right now are going to be short, unedited, but soon I want to start getting a little bit higher quality videos to you guys. But today I wanted to discuss why I'm running for Congress. And I don't know. I'm just kidding. No, I know. It's because I don't like the way the country's going. In some ways, we're doing really well, right? Like the economy is doing well. Quarantine not considered, the economy is doing really well. People are, they have jobs and stuff like this, but um, wages is an issue. Like people are not able to have families the way they traditionally would. Um, I like the concept of a nuclear family, right? I like the concept of a mother and a father and children, and that's really hard. Children need both parents around, right? Culturally, we have a really big issue with that, right? We also have, especially in minority communities, with a lot of dads in jail and prison, and then in all communities, both parents are not home; they're at work. Why? It's because wages are proportionally lower than they've ever been compared to the cost of living. And this is true for most areas. And I'm fortunate enough that for the last couple of years I've been working at least $15 an hour and higher. And even before that, I was able to pay my mortgage, but I also did buy my house at the dip of the market during the 2008 2009 financial crisis. Not during then, but right when the market started to go back up. I bought my home, it was foreclosed. Not the best home, but it's a home, it's property, and I really enjoy that. And I'm very thankful to be in that position to be a homeowner instead of having to rent. And once you start renting, it's a trap. It's so hard to get on your feet from renting because the way it used to be is you would rent for a while and then you save up money because your starting job would be it would pay well enough that you could save money on the side. And now that's really difficult to do. Not only because the cost of living is going up. um, Sorry, I just got a text message. I was reading that. Oop, you can wait for a minute. um, I lost my train of thought. What am I doing? Um, where am I? What is my name? I'm just kidding. Um, I'm sorry, this is super awkward. I really did forget what I was talking. I was talking about wages, but specifically where I was. Um, okay, yeah. So not just the cost of living has gone up, like rent and mortgage payments are going up. Mortgage interest rates are low right now, right? And they have been for a minute. But that's besides the point. Cost of food is going up. Cost of fuel is going up. And at the same time, where people were having families decades ago at lower costs for all those things, they also didn't have to pay for phone, internet. Um, Car insurance was optional back then. Okay, yeah, I was alive. I was very young, but I was alive when car insurance was optional in Utah. So if that tells you anything about my age being an indicator of experience, there it is. Um, so we have issues like that, and then at the same time, there's also people pushing for like higher wages, and like that's cool, but you can't just across the board increase wages. You don't want burger flippers making $15 an hour. I mean, maybe you do, right? That's your prerogative, but at the same time, you don't deserve $15 an hour for flipping a burger. And when you push a corporation to pay that, what do? They switch to automation, which is another big problem because yeah, you can always have that classic argument. Well, when you automate, that just creates more jobs in a different sector. Okay, but then that sector goes to automation, and eventually you get machines that build and replicate and repair themselves. Then you run out of sectors for jobs, and then you can get into this territory where Andrew Yang was, which is giving everybody basically a small subsidy to live on a monthly basis. But then you have the issue of people having fulfillment. Like you can't just vacation your entire life. It's shown to be unhealthy. People who do that develop in a very unhealthy way, right? Um, I've had I got out of the Marine Corps, I basically didn't have to work. I only worked part-time, excuse me, but I went to school full-time. But then for a while, I just stopped caring about school, and it was just one long vacation, and it really sucked. I felt really shitty about myself. I didn't take care of myself. um, I wasn't working out. I felt hopeless. I felt like just deteriorating. And when you have a job, you have that like sense of commitment, and you have that sense of productivity. And so these are issues that we have to tackle, and these are things that I'm interested in, and that I don't think my community and country are putting the spotlight on, or we're putting the spotlight on it in the wrong way, in my opinion. And so that's why I want to run. Not just those issues, we can talk about other things too. Second Amendment, that's a big one. I'm very pro-gun, and I don't like seeing people pushing very hard for banning firearms and strictly regulating them. Or you get these people that are like, oh, you can have all the guns you want, but each bullet costs $10,000. Well, okay, but like you're essentially limiting access to firearms the same way. And what happens when there's a DUI? We blame the drunk driver. What happens when a surgeon leaves a bone saw in your body? We blame the surgeon, right? But all of a sudden, because it's convenient to our point of view, if there's a mass shooting, we blame the weapon. And if you look at other developed countries, there's a good argument to be made that murder by guns is much lower, right? In Australia, practically nobody gets killed by guns, but the numbers for murder by hammers and knives is higher. And that's because people are inherently aggressive, and we're going to kill each other no matter what, right? As we get civilized, I mean, you can argue what civilized really means, but as we develop and move forward, crime rates tend to drop. And that's pretty important to consider when you are thinking about banning things like weapons. And so if crime rates are lower and the use of those weapons is lower, why would you try to remove those weapons? Especially when you know that those weapons are essential to preserving freedom from all enemies, foreign and domestic. You could be like, oh, you can't stand up to the might of the U.S. military. Well, okay, but, Vietnam, Al-Qaeda, there are multiple groups that have shown that it is, it's going to become a numbers game for sure, but there are conflicts that the U.S. has been involved in, and other nations too, that have proven that the bigger, badder military isn't guaranteed to win, right? So you can't just use that as a cop-out argument to ban firearms or firearm access. And there's also the fact that, doesn't matter how big our military is, our greatest opponent in the world right now outnumbers us 4-1 on a population basis. They are very aggressive, and they are very, very ambitious, right? China is expanding. China has disputed territory with a lot of our allies. And President Xi Jinping, he really doesn't like us that much, but he likes our money, right? And so that's why things are a little peaceful right now, because there is mutual trade. But that trade is probably going to deteriorate, especially after this COVID-19 thing. But also when you look at China's other practices right now, we don't really talk about it, right? Because it's a mutually beneficial trade situation between China and the United States. But we all like to demonize the Western world for what it did to Africa 2 to 500 years ago, right? And China's essentially doing a corporatized version of that today. But we don't talk about that, do we? No. Because you want your cheap Febreze made in China because the cost of labor is lower there, and it's cheaper to make some kid suffer immeasurably, as Louis C.K. says, making these things for your convenience. and then ship it across the world instead of paying American workers or Mexican workers or Canadian workers. And we do get a lot of products from Mexico and Canada, but most of it comes from really three places. It's Vietnam. I can't remember the third one. Maybe it's Mexico. I'm not sure. I just go off of what I see on the labels for this particular thing that I'm saying. And then China. China's number one, right? So these are things that we also have to look at: is where do we want to get our things from and why? Why are we going to favor cheap convenience, or are we going to favor the path less traveled, where it's paying American workers and supporting higher wages in America? But the people, particularly on the left, also don't want to talk about that either. They want their cheap products. They want their cheap lattes. And they want their cheap chocolate. That's another thing. A lot of chocolate companies don't like to talk about this, but there's a lot of cocoa farms in Africa that literally use slave labor. It's you might argue it's a little bit different because now it's Africans owned by Africans. It's children taken out of the school system in the middle of the country where nobody really talks to them, but so there's also a lot of hypocrisy in the way we run our political system from society upwards and from political world downwards. I don't like these things. There needs to be a discussion about all of them. What else do you guys want to talk about? Oil, natural resources, right? Nuclear power. I'm going to catch some flack for this, but I don't like it, right? Why would you transition from one non-renewable to another? Now, traditionally, nuclear has been labeled as renewable, especially fusion, which we don't have access to right now, but it's quote-unquote virtually inexhaustible, so some people count it as renewable, but that's not the case. Really, the only renewables around are solar, wood, water, hydroelectric, and then there's huge potential in tidal energy. Basically what you do is it's like wind turbines, but you put them underwater and they harness the power of tides as they come in and out. These are things that we could be using, but do people in San Diego and LA do that? No. They want to complain, but then they still drive to work when they've got like the biggest potential for electricity right off their shores. Now, you do have to take environmental considerations with that, right? But it's a big, complicated discussion, and it takes forward-thinking people who think about these things all the time. And I think that's one of my biggest qualifications. We're not going to get into my qualifications today, but one really important thing for somebody who you're going to be seeking to represent you is how much they think about the issues. And me, I don't care about money so much as I care about things that happen in the world. So I am currently trying to grow my financial position, right? Because that's really important for security and maintaining my mortgage and keeping things the way they are in my life and keeping my conveniences in staying where I'm at in society. But we have to also spend time thinking about how we get that money and where that money goes. And yeah, I have some pet words. I say and a lot. I say a lot. Sorry. Not sorry. I'm really not. I know it's annoying though, so I will try to change that. It's been a minute since I've done YouTube, and yeah, I'm just me and me. So I'm trying to think. I mean, there's so many reasons somebody could want to make a change in the world, and I think I have a lot of reasons that I want to represent Utah. And granted, this entire video has been mostly bigger picture issues, right? Not really things that affect us at the city of Ogden or the city of Brigham. These are things that are more a national thing, but I'm running for a federal position. And so you have to keep that in mind, that while I'm running for a federal position, my goal is to scale the things in our local communities at a federal level. So federal things like renewable energy issues, stuff like carbon buybacks, right? Like that's a federal thing that affects us here, especially in Ogden. We have a lot of manufacturing here. So those are things that we have to take into consideration. And I sound like I'm talking out of my ass. I feel like I am. I'm really not, though. Like cap and trade, though, it's a really good example of a federal program that affects a local community, right? Public education, the military. We have a Hillfield Air Force Base down in Layton. These are federal issues that come to our community, and they are positioned in our community, and so it's this really weird. I don't know. Like I picture it in my head, but it's I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it's local and federal. Like if you took those two and you blended them up, that's what my job is intended to be, and that's what I want to do. This video is going on way too long. I'm talking out of my ass. My grandpa says I don't know my ass from a hole in the ground, and that might be true, but I do know that I want to run for Congress, and I do know that I think I have what it takes. And if you like my content, if you like my dumb face, if you think my jokes are funny, don't forget to dislike and unsubscribe, because I know you're going to hate everything I say. I'm just kidding. When I was doing YouTube before, I always said dislike and unsubscribe, but like and subscribe, leave a comment, tell me how you're feeling, tell me if you agree or disagree with anything I said, and then we can have a discussion. I like to make myself available for these things so we can talk about them. Yeah, that being said, I'll see you in the next video.